1998. What a year to be a senior in high school. Also, what a year to win a state wrestling championship for Simon Kenton. Sir, if you would, tell us who you are.
David DeStefano.
And of course, you are the 1998 140-pound state champion from Simon Kenton High School. And we have you make video number 16 of the Simon Kenton State Champions. And as we know, if you guys watched the series, Simon Kenton has 28 state champions. We'll talk about who we're missing, who we've got a little bit later. But you're video number 16. So we like to start everybody off with the standard question, if you will. What gets you into wrestling? How do you find it? What's the exciting part of it? You're like, man, I got to be a part of this.
You know, I was always a tiny kid. I went into high school. I was around 86 pounds. I was like 4'6", and I just moved to Kentucky from Detroit. And the reason I got into wrestling, I was sixth grade, and I was just getting. I mean, these kids talk about bullying today. They had no clue what it was like back in the 80s.
Oh,
and, yeah. I would get stuffed in the locker, ripping giving me wedgies. And so I just, one day wrestling had it was like an elective kind of thing at our middle school. And I went out and me and my buddy, and I liked it. And by, it was like my 8th grade year. I was undefeated. We had a really good team. It was called Clintondale. I would have went to Clintondale High School, and I loved it because it gave me the confidence. It protected me. Like the kid that was bullying me, picking on me, whatever you would call it. He smacked me in the back of the head one day. I just double legged him, dropped him right on his head.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like all his friends looked, and that was it. He never laid a hand on me. And so I think that was what really motivated me. And I really wasn't that athletic in other sports. Horrible basketball. I was too slow. I ran track, and my friends made fun of me. I had linemen passing me. So I played tennis in high school, and that was just to find girls or what, I liked it.
I don't blame you.
So wrestling really, it gave me an avenue. I don't know if I would have been designated with ADD, but I had a lot of energy, and for me, it was just something that I could just channel my energy. And I knew that it didn't really matter how athletic I was or what size I was, that if I worked harder than anybody else, that I could be better. And so to me, it was just a sport like that. It was, I could, so yeah.
No, that's an excellent story, man. And, doing this, we're closing in on video number 300 review videos. Of course, Kentucky, we have 811 state champions.
Congrats to you for doing that, though. I mean, that is, you're creating an archive that generations are going to be able to watch, when we're long gone.
And that's that, man. Appreciate you saying that. I really do. It's been a labor of love. It really has. And the stories that we've been able to pull out, the history that we thought was lost forever, I think it kind of caught you by surprise, me telling you that we had your match video. I don't think you expected that. And you said it's been a while since you've seen it, so I'm going to be excited to get your true reaction for it here a little bit later. But we've heard that the bullying, the getting picked on, like I said, whatever you want to call it, we've heard a lot of people on the channel say that they were, whether it was at school, whether they grew up in a rough neighborhood, whether it was siblings or somebody raising them, being abusive to them, that they went out for wrestling, or they had, like you said, they had a gym class or an elective or whatever where they learned just a double leg and a half or whatever it was, and it was enough to get people to back off of them. You know what I'm saying? So that was that's an excellent story. You said you moved to Kentucky from Detroit.
Yeah.
And did you come into, I guess, did you go all 4 years to Simon Kenton? Did you come in as a junior, as a sophomore?
Yeah.
How did it work?
Yeah. My dad, he had a job transfer to Cincinnati for the IRS, and the famous 3-letter word that people hate. But so we were looking around for schools to go to, and we had no. I mean, I have family in southeastern Kentucky in Pineville.
Yep.
And Corbin, Barberville down there. But so we were looking around, and I remember my parents, we were looking at going to like Gallatin County because they wanted like a bunch of land. And I was wrestling. My mom was like, well, there's no wrestling there. So they were like, okay, we're going to try to find a school where we can get some land and has a decent wrestling program. So they first looked at Holmes, and they didn't want, it was, we were in a city. They didn't want that. They looked at Scott. They couldn't really afford it, Scott. And Campbell County was kind of too far away. And we moved out to a little tiny town called Piner. And, thank God I went to Simon Kenton. My wife's from there, a couple of my best friends. I feel very proud to be from that high school and part of those 28 state champs, and
oh yeah,
so
absolutely. And while we're on that topic, Simon Kenton, excellent wrestling pedigree, 1987 team state champions, which we talked about that ad nauseum on the channel. Your Dave Barnes is on that team, your Jeff Evermans, your Chuck Reimers, we go on and on, but those are the three that we've met. Or well, Chuck has it. We've talked to Chuck. It's just getting up with him. We've done Jeff's video. Jeff gets the party started in the 87 finals with a pin in the 98-pound weight class. And then Chuck comes right behind him and gets another pin. So Simon Kenton's off to the races. As it stands of this filming, we're filming this on the March 18th, 2000. We like to date our videos. That way people can say it's accurate as of the filming in case somebody comes back 5 years later and they're like, oh no, you're wrong on this amount. No, as it is now, Simon Kenton, 28 state champions. That's 8th place overall in the state, tied with St. Xavier. 27 boys.
Is that a female?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yep. 27 boys, and then the one girl, Gabriel Ocasio. Of course, we'll talk a little bit about her story. Unbeknownst to, I think, everybody, you and her have a very common association with wrestling. We'll talk a little bit later on in the video. We want to, that's called a tease in the entertainment business, guys. So team state champions, 28 individual state champions, 2 most outstanding, 1988 Dave Barnes, and then 2017 Casey Cornett. So let's talk, though, about your state tournament run in Kentucky. 1996.
Hey, can I pause you for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
As great as Simon Kenton is for wrestling, right, throughout the years, historically, we won a state title. If you walk in, I haven't been there in years, but us wrestlers, we kind of were like, we were backslid from the basketball. We didn't even have a wrestling room. Like literally, and I bet you it's still to this day, we practice either in a classroom or we practice in the locker room, in the football locker room down by the football stand. We didn't have a wrestling room. And you go in, they won the state basketball title in like 1980, and they still have a whole shrine. And then you got wrestling is like, here's a trophy case, So I wish our school did more for propping us up. But anyways, go on. So,
I think I could be mistaken. I'll have to get Peebles or Braden Blevins, one of the guys up there at Simon Kenton. But I know that they have plaques for each state champion. And I'll make sure you guys will see right here. You're looking at a photo. This is your plaque. And I think, I could be mistaken, but I think they have a wrestling room now. I feel pretty confident saying they have a wrestling room. I'll have to have double verification on that, but I feel pretty confident they got a wrestling room now. So, moving on up, Dr. Jefferson's moving on up to the east side, you know what I mean? to a deluxe apartment in the sky. I guess the deluxe apartment is a wrestling room. And to that sentiment, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but you're talking about practicing in a classroom, the football locker room, an auxiliary gym. I can't imagine. I think Campbell County did. I know that Woodford County did. And I think the two private schools in Louisville, St. Xavier and Trinity. Outside of that, I don't, of all the videos that we've done, I don't think anybody else has brought up that they had their own designated, this is the wrestling room area. I think everybody was pretty much in a gym, like you said, or a spare classroom that wasn't being used or something to that effect back in the 90s. I know I wrestled the 99, 2000, and the 2000, 2001 season. Didn't get to finish the 01 season due to an injury, but we practiced in our gym, like the bleachers on the top, like there was like a landing. You could push the bleachers back. We'd roll the mats out every day and practice, and after practice, roll them back up. So that's where we practice. And I think a lot of other teams did that as well. So it's just a different time now, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
a different time. But 1996, 103 pounds as a sophomore, you come in 5th place. So that's a pretty good showing.
Yeah, not
First
bad.
year,
You know, what?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was a weird year. I finally broke 100 pounds my freshman year, right? And so I'm going in that year. My freshman year, we had a great team. That we had like Matt Lee, Mike Lee.
Oh yeah.
Did you get them on here yet? Because they're definitely.
I have the video for Mike's 94 and Steve Kaiser's 94. I haven't got Matt's 93 video yet. We're efforting it. We think somebody's got a copy of it, but we've talked to them and they're all in agreement to do it. It's just getting up with them.
Yeah. So coming out of that year where we took third, I was the only one that didn't. I didn't make state that year on the team, so it really motivated me. My sophomore year, what ended up happening, I was fine on weight, 103, pretty much all year, and like I was getting like leg pains. I didn't know what was going on. I grew 6 inches during the wrestling season.
Oh, wow.
I was ended up by the state tournament. I was dropping like 12 pounds, 15 pounds a week. And we didn't know. Like, I'm like, I was eating an orange or an apple, but nobody thought to like measure me. And so It was a little awkward of a year. I kind of like, I felt a little uncoordinated at times. But yeah, truthfully, other than placing fifth, I don't remember too much about that year. You know, just.
No, I get it. And that, of course, in the time that we live in now, you got to do the body fat testing. You got to do the weight descent plan. Everything is monitored. I mean, the KHSAA can look at it. Different schools can look and see how much weight somebody's dropped, body fat, and you can't be below a certain weight by this date. Back, in our day, and even before ours, I mean, people were cutting 25, 30 pounds. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
that was insane.
That was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And like you said, maybe eat an orange a day or a banana, or maybe if you're lucky and you're good, get a bottle of water and just enough to recharge the system. But the height aspect, that is something that people, 14 to 18-year-old boys and girls are growing. You know what I'm saying? And who knows when the growth spurt's going to happen. So if you grew 6 inches in the wrestling season, that's a lot of body mass to be added on. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of weight. You know what I mean?
And couldn't wait at the time. It was weird. That was, definitely was.
Well, so in 1997, you're a junior. So you went from 103 pounds to 130.
I was probably almost 130 after sophomore year.
I believe it. 6 inches, man. That's a lot. So you're a junior coming in, placing 5th, but you get to the quarters you run into Michael Kidd, who, oh, by the way, goes on to be in the finals, and he beats you, drops you down to the consolation bracket. But I have to ask you, you guys will see a screenshot of this. The bracket has -1 SK team point. Do you remember what happened there?
No. I guess I probably did something, ticked off a ref or something,
Yeah.
which would pretty much be uncharacteristic of me. But I went in there with high expectations. I think I was undefeated in the state of Kentucky. Back then we were wrestling a lot in Ohio. And so I didn't wrestle a lot of the guys downstate.
Right.
And I remember going into it, thinking I was pretty I don't know where I was ranked. Maybe I definitely top 3 that year. So it was pretty disappointing to not place, especially after I took 5th my sophomore year. So I would have to say that negative point was I probably had an attitude after a loss.
No, I get it. I like to ask guys all these years later, because not just with this, but no matter if it's a Super Bowl reunion video, NBA Finals, World Series, college basketball, whatever the Olympics, whatever the sport is if you put an emotional investment into it, yes, you may not think about it every day. Yes, you may not talk about it every chance you get. But if you put yourself in, you emotionally invest yourself into a sport or trying to compete to win a championship for yourself or your team, it still matters. It still matters no matter how old you get, that you know what your best was. You know that you gave your best and you ended up on top of the podium, or you know that you gave your best to the team and your team won the state championship or whatever the prize was. Or you also can remember if you didn't do your best. And it's both sides of the coin. You remember, you talked to, I got to meet Jack Givens. He was on Kentucky's 78 basketball team. And he's the one that scored like 41 points in the national championship. And I was like, shook his hand, Mr. Gibbons, this is an honor to meet you. And I said, first question I gotta ask you is, when you walked into that gym for that national championship game, did you realize you was going to score 41 points? And he just said, I just knew that my team needed me, whether it was scoring, whether it was passing the ball, whether it was being on defense. And it just so happened that I needed to score that night. And everywhere he's gone, probably in the state of Kentucky since that game, everybody talks about it. And not just with that, but you can look at receivers that have dropped passes and lost Super Bowls or whatever the case is. If you put an emotional investment into a sport or a competition, you can remember that you gave your best, or that maybe you come up a little bit short of what you're capable of, and it still matters all these years later.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. And later on in my career, and we can get into that later, but I had to work with a sports psychologist when I lived at the Olympic Training Center, and then even afterwards, because it was trying to utilize my defeats for my gain. And what I realized at that point was that through all those years, for me to get into mindset to compete at that level, I basically identified myself as a wrestler. And it wasn't like there was no separation between David and David the wrestler. And so I was able to make the greatest gains, at a higher level when I isolated that. And so I knew, okay, wrestling is just a part of who I am. It's not me. It's not. I am not just a wrestler. And so I wish I wish kids, and maybe they get it now, but the psychological aspect to competing is it is so critical and clutch, and like with my kids, I got 2 kids that wrestle. My son's 13 and my daughter's 8. and I really coached their mindset more than I coached them on the athletic aspect to it, because I'm like, you know what, they'll catch up once they hit puberty, things are going to change.
Yeah.
So I really coached their mindset more than them physically now.
No, I get it, and I'm excited to see them get to watch Dad wrestle. You know, that's going to be the fun of it. But let's talk about your 1998 bracket real quick. 140 pounds. You're a senior, and 1998, great year of wrestling. So far, the 98 guys we've met with that off the top of my head, Dean Williams at Seneca, Ian Horn.
My boy Dean.
Yeah,
That's
Dean. Shout out Dean.
Man, you know, we went to college together, and then we wrestled Greco-Roman together as well, like when he was on the Marine Corps team. Mm-hmm. So I spent a lot of time with my boy.
Oh yeah, we got to go to Dean's home there in Louisville. Met his dad. His dad's a two-time state champion, 1965 and 19. He still had his original medals from 65 and 66. Sure did.
Oh wow! Somebody stole my state medal. I don't have it.
No kidding.
Yeah, and my ring. I had a ring and my medal, and they both got stolen.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I remember you telling me that we was on the phone at the state tournament, and I think you were in the middle of telling me that story, and it's like, we need a ref on mat 4. I was like, I gotta go. See you. We done Dean Williams from Seneca, Chris Dunn, Woodford County, Ian Horn, Woodford County, Josh Whitaker, Woodford County, Chris Floyd from Wayne County, Jason Dietrich from LaRue County, and now you. I think that's everybody. Jeremy Rhodes. No, that's not right.
Was it George King? Was George in there?
George was in 2000.
Okay.
Yep. We've done Josh Priest from Sheldon Clark. So we've done a pretty good amount of 1998 wrestlers. You start off the tournament with a 3-minute and 2-second fall over Derek Trowbridge of Union County. And funny thing about Derek is he goes on in 2000, 160 pounds, win state championship, because you had Derek. His nickname is Monk.
Monk.
Yeah, we had Monk and George King back to back at 160 and 171 for Union County. You talk about some animals, buddy. Those two were absolute animals.
I did that Fargo that I was telling you about. We were at the camp together. It was Monk and George, man. I tell you, what a characters they are, man. I would love to see them, man, sometime, you know.
George is going to watch this because I'll tag him. I've got it. I can't tell it on the YouTube feed. I'll have to tell you off the air because YouTube will demonetize the video, or they'll take it down. But I've got a George King story to tell you when we stop recording. You get to the quarters. You're wrestling Brian Murphy from St. Xavier. You win that by a 9-3 decision. Brian goes on to get 6th place that year. So, 9-3 looks like you were in pretty much control of the match there.
I do remember I was always, anytime you wrestle somebody from St. X, I don't know how they are now, but it was always like, you better mind your business, because they always had something that they could catch you on. So I remember Coach was like adamant, was like, just wrestle smart, be strong, stick to the game plan. So
and they're still that way. They've had some hammers come through there the last couple years. You get to the semis, you're wrestling Jason Lampkin from Hopkinsville, and you win that by a squeaker, a 3-2 decision. Tell us about it.
Man, I remember the emotions more than the match.
I got you.
I never matched up well with tall guys, and they just, my style, I didn't, it was really tough. I always had a hard time wrestling with tall guys, and I didn't necessarily feel that, I felt control of the match, but I couldn't open it up and couldn't really score on them. It was really hard. I think I got a takedown and an escape, and I just rode them. I think it was probably that simple. And I was getting a little nervous because I was like, that my senior year, it was like, that was it. Like I trained like a madman. We had some pigs and cows. And so every morning my dad, he would make me feed the pigs. And I, being from Michigan, like we didn't have pigs. And they smelled, man. They were down at the bottom of the hill. And I would have to carry a bucket of slop and a bucket of water down the hill every morning. And then I would run to the church and back, which was 2 miles. I did that every day because I just knew, I was like, I'm not going to leave a shadow of a doubt that I didn't train harder than anybody. There was a quote by Gable that I had on my wall, and it said something along the lines like, I would visualize my opponent training and I would train harder. And then I would visualize my opponent sitting in the locker room and I would train even harder. And like, that was like in my room. And I was like neurotic that year. I didn't want to live with the regret that I didn't work hard enough to be a state champ. So I knew I had to work harder than anybody. So So in my mind, I felt I knew that there wasn't anybody in the state that year that was training like I was,
right?
Or I didn't think they were anyways. And so it gave me that perpetual confidence that, I was able to, stay in there.
And before we talk about who you wrestle in the finals, let's go back a week. You wrestle in the regions, CR Fields from Scott.
Yeah.
And I don't have the score, but we have the result that he beat you.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. Actually, this kind of opens up a little story here, if you don't mind me.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. So I was actually 145. I started the season at 145.
Okay.
And the Bell brothers, it was Clint and Dylan.
That's right.
And with Scott, we all hung in that similar area. We try to pick up the Scott girls or whatever. So I was wrestling 145, and I was pretty much handling most of the guys that I was wrestling. And my coach, so we had to, along with Kai's, we had our coach was Shane Elkin. He was something else, man. He was a football coach that took over to wrestling because we needed a coach, and he just insane. It's just what he did. It was like the run and the sprint, like his mindset. It was different. So one day we're getting ready to watch his Vision Quest, right?
Oh yeah.
And so coach was kind of breaking my chops. He's like, yeah, you'll win state at 145, but it's the weakest weight class in the state. He goes, so if you want to be a state champ at the weakest weight class, he goes, then go ahead. He goes, but if you want to be a stud, you'll drop down to 140. And I'm like, huh? And I'm like, CR Fields, I think he was a 2-timer already. And I'm like, I think he was going for 3 or going for 2. I forget what it was. Then there was somebody else in that weight class as well. And I'm like, so we watched Vision Quest, right? And, he drops some weight, like, the mindset in that movie. I actually just watched it the other night with my son for the first time in a quarter century, probably, right? And I'm like, I can't believe I had the cojones to actually drop that weight class, because it was like 145. People kind of dodged me a little bit. Yep. And so I dropped to 140 for conference. And I beat CR 18-9. And it was a barn burner, man. It was like going to the bat. That was like one of my funnest matches I ever remember. Like it was, we were in Northern Kentucky. We were in the finals, Campbell County. Everybody was there, right? And it kind of got hyped up. And they did like a little news article, came to the school, interviewed me ahead of time. And they were like, why are you dropping this weight? And I'm like, well, I want to be the best. And I want to show everybody that I am the best. And this is the next, that's the best is down at 140. They're not at 145. I'm done. Yeah. So I go out there and I beat them. and makes the front page of the newspaper, you know, like, blah, 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 C.R. Fields goes down by DeStefano. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I got this guy. So conference was like, or I don't know if they still have conference.
They do. Yep, I believe they still
right?
do it there.
So it was like maybe about a 6-week to 7-week stint before districts. And I go out to districts, make it to the finals, and I get beat 4-2 or something. I lost by 2 points. And talk about pooping in your pants, right? Sitting there going, what like when talking about having mental, like, what's that word? Cognitive dissonance, right? Like where you're sitting there going, did I make the right choice? I'm like, this dude is tough. I'm like, it was a battle and he still beat me. And I'm like, and I remember going home that night. I worked out that night till probably midnight. And I was like, is my dream going to be taken from me?
Yeah.
And then what is it, like a week later, you got regions?
Yeah, the next week is regions.
So I tried to get my mind right and go out to regions, man. We make it to the finals again. Beats me. And it wasn't there was a couple questionable calls. It'd be interesting to see what he had to say, but he was a great competitor. I would never take anything away from CR. He was, and he actually, we became friends, you know, a bit afterwards. And I really wanted him in the finals. I really did. I wanted to validate it. I wanted to vindicate, like, hey, we're on the final stage. We're on a podium. You got two warriors right here. Let's duke it out, you know? So to me, that was always like unfinished business. Like he's up 2-1 on me, you know what I mean? And so as a competitor, that always lingered in my head. It made me even question the validity of my state championship to some extent. Cause I was like, there's one guy in the state that I didn't beat. And so that was, so when I lost, Steve Kaiser was up at, I don't know if he took a time off. I don't know how it worked. I'd have to ask him, but Paul called him and was like, yo, you got to come help Dave. You got to help him. And so Steve came down and trained with me every day. I must have drilled 500 shots. I forget what the number was, but Steve literally, you know, he was a college athlete at that time. We battled all boom, 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 boom. Right after regions, I was with him every day. And that was, I thank him for that, because that was very selfless of him to give up his time and do that for me. And I think that was one of the key, it gave me that extra edge that I needed for the state tournament, you know.
And why use Paul's 92 review videos on the channel, and we're going to be meeting with Steve at some point, so you'll get to watch Paul and Steve's video to check out their skills. But the reason I bring that up is in CR's first match against Adam Cecil from DeSales, he wins the quickest pin of the entire state tournament with 21 seconds.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can see that, but it's got an arrow. It says quick pin right there beside his name.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And so CR goes on gets to the semis, and he gets upset by Zach Donnelly from Lafayette. And
what was the score of that match?
7-6.
Wow.
So both matches, both semifinals were 1 point. Yours was a 3-2. Donnelly and Fields was a 7-6. So you're coming into the finals, of course, a senior. Your record coming in 41-4. Donnelly's record coming in is 33-3. Had you wrestled Donnelly this season?
No, I never. again, most of we would, I guess coaches thought was like, hey, Northern Kentucky, we had a lot of good studs.
Mhm.
We did our Northern Kentucky stuff, and then we pretty much wrestled in Ohio. So that I think that was my two losses were to CR, and then two other Ohio. I forget what they ended up placing at state, but they were. I think it was GMV. Did they still have that tournament?
The
Great.
GVWA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So I think I lost in the finals there or in the semis. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, no, I never wrestled Zach. I didn't even know who he was really.
I got you. Of course, for those of you, maybe Dave's videos brought you to the channel. Lafayette is a Lexington area school. You can take I-75 and just go straight down pretty much, and you'll run right into Lexington if you don't know the geography of Kentucky. Chances are most of you guys do, but if you don't, just want to I like to give everybody a geography lesson on the schools. I love throwing in as much information as I can in the videos.
Alex,
So
you might, because I remember in the match there was a bunch of non-Simon Kenton people cheering me on. So there must have been something going on between Lafayette, why they didn't want him to win, and why they wanted me. I don't know if it was like Woodford County. I don't know if it was some other team. There must have been something with that Lexington and Louisville area or something, because I had more fans than I normally would.
I'll have to do some digging because I don't know the and what I've got a lot of friends that are Woodford County, but it's in '98 Simon Kenton, or I'm sorry, '98 St. X wins the team title, and it was a pretty close battle. Hang on real quick, let me pull up the team scores. That way we can get an accurate. Maybe there was a team race going on here that we just don't know about. Let's see. St. Xavier wins the team race, team championship, I should say, 161 points. Scott, where CR was on the team there, they come in second with 146.5. Lafayette come in 27th place. So I can't imagine there was a team issue going on. But most of the time it's the entire, or maybe not so much now, but back in the 90s and 2000s, it was the whole arena against Woodford County. Everybody booed Woodford County. So they were so good, and everybody wanted to see them get beat. Now it's been, like you said, a day or two since you've seen your finals video, correct?
At least 2 decades.
And the thing about this video, it's got the face-off, the match, and the medal ceremony. But the video that I got is the original. It's not the original VHS tape. Kids, look up what a VHS tape is. Ask your parents if you're watching this what a VHS tape is. But there's certain things about the 90s that are if you grew up in the 90s or you were in high school in the 90s like we were, you see things, you hear certain things, and you just know, like, this is the 90s encapsulated. And the very beginning, the intro of this video is so 1990s, I had to include it. I couldn't leave it out. And whenever you see it, Dave, you'll know what I'm talking about. But we used to get
I've definitely never seen this footage, because the only video I got was my mom, and somehow she got down by Matt's side, and it's like one of these.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. But there used to be, like, I guess, mandated television specials. We used to have these big satellites on our school from, like, KET, the Kentucky Education, whatever it was called. And when I saw this, I was like, I've got to include this intro. So, man, let's pull it up. That blue screen, if you grew up with the VCR era, you know what that blue screen is. That means something's about ready to come on. So, Dave, man, here we go.
I'm excited.
How 1990s is this? There you come running out, man.
Oh man, I'm getting like goosebumps.
Now you're on the right. You've got the knee pads on. Everybody will know. Right out of the gate and shoot in. Staying low. This was the best atmosphere the KHSAA ever produced right here, under the lights in the dungeon.
Oh yeah.
All right, we're out of bounds. We're neutral. So he shoots in on you.
No, that was me.
Oh, that was you. That's right. I'm sorry. Too much blue going on. Too much blue. Knee pads.
I knew it. I felt it. We'd been practicing those shots, man.
All right, so now you're on top. What are we looking to do on top? What's your breakdowns? Are we looking to turn? What?
Man, I tell you what, I completely forget. You know, most of my wrestling mind is trapped with Greco. So I don't even. It's so foreign. I don't even know what I would say. Maybe like a spiral or like a 2-on-1 tilt. I was going for a claw here.
Yep. All right, we got a bounce. That should be one, Mr. Official. Ooh, I don't know.
I wasn't the greatest on top. You know, I don't ever really. I was going for the claw. Come on.
There it is. Yep. Now, give everybody an idea of how loud it was in there. I turned the volume down, or I edited the volume down on the video, and I have the actual volume like down to 4. So it was loud in there.
Yeah.
All right, so you're trying to pull that arm in on the left side. Still got that single. There you go. Nice job. Forced him down.
He was. I remember he was strong, man. That kid. He was.
All right, and
I hit a stalling call already in the first period.
Yep.
Oh man.
I was going to see if you remembered that or not.
No.
You can tell you've got some Greco roots or some freestyle roots with the lift right there. All right, so we're neutral. We're back neutral.
What? I look at my technique now and I've got a lot better over the years. That was for sure. You know, it's just not even penetrating. I'm just dropping to a knee.
So he's got a whizzer on that shot. Of course, you guys are back up on your feet. That's the end of the period.
I think that singlet, I think that was like Kaiser's singlet from like the 80s.
Okay.
That old singlet that I got.
Very possible. Now, you won the toss, and you deferred your choice. He's going to take down. So, the score is 2-1. I'm trying like pull that arm in, like some type of a cross face. You can tell, man. You can tell he's strong by the way he's pulling that arm in.
There we go. There we go.
There it is. There it is.
We're going for a cradle. See, it's so funny. In my mind, the only thing I really remember is the overtime. That's the only. Most of this, I don't.
Now you're running that kind of like a head lever there. Was that something that you normally done, or did you just feel like he was susceptible to it, or?
I tell you the truth, I don't remember.
No, it.
And I truthfully, I thought I didn't know I knew that claw until college, but I guess I learned it in high school.
Mm-hmm. You can tell you're comfortable with it because you've done it, I think, on every single stand-up that he's hit.
Yeah.
That you've been able to, launch down and pull. He hits a sit out there on you. Nothing yet. He's still down.
I was pushing hard not to give up this escape, man.
And right there, you got hit for a tech violation for forcing him out. So
I did?
2-2, yep. And you're going optional start. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
All right, so now he's up 3-2 on you.
Look at that horrible shot. Keep it in. Keep him in
bounds. Keep him in.
Pull that wizard. Come on.
Ooh, trying to drag the toes there for that take, but
yeah,
I believe is the call. We're back neutral. Do you have a lot of your family in the building here for this?
And my grandfather, he came in from New York City. My father and my mom and grandma, and my just the immediate sisters.
I got you.
Mom and dad.
I got you.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather, him and my father, they came down. My grandfather kept making fun. He goes, "The only restaurant in this place is Applebee's."
That's about the truth. Back in 1998.
Come on.
Right. Ooh. And you can tell right there that's a senior move, dragging your toes, trying to get that takedown.
Yeah, I definitely felt I didn't feel threatened that he was going to take me down.
Right.
I felt pretty.
You can tell you've worked on your shot, like to be ready for it. So you're going to take down. This is the first time we've got to see you on the going down here.
Oh yeah, I'm down 4-2.
Yep, 4-2
to the third. I remember this thought, boy. I was like, get up, get a takedown.
Yeah, get up, get out, get a takedown. All right, now on the bottom, this is the first time we've got to see you. Are we a sit out, a switch, a scramble, just get to your feet?
I was usually stand-ups. Come on.
Get your head out. Get your head out. Get your head out. There it is.
There.
So you get your reversal. We're tied up 4-4, and you've got a wing going on
now,
there.
I remember this part because, oh shoot, I was afraid that I was going to either get hit for stalling or I was going to let him up. And not have enough time, so that's why I cut him.
All right, so he's up now 5-4. There it is. You're putting the pressure on him now, and he gets a takedown on you.
Shit, I didn't remember that. Oh, now I'm down 7-4.
7-4. Yep.
Well, with a minute left.
It's like about 1:03 left in the third period.
Holy crap.
And I believe that's your coach there at the table.
Yeah.
An explanation.
Coach Elkin. Oh, man.
All right. So you're to your feet.
Oh, come Let us wrestle on the line.
Let us wrestle. Come on, ref. It's always the referee. You know what I mean? Believe me, I hear it all the time. All right, so he gets his second caution, or it was a caution on you. I'm sorry.
Caution
on you on the bottom there.
Oh shoot! So he's thinking he's about to win this thing.
Yep. And you hit a switch. You get your reversal. So now it's 6-7.
I hear my coach tell me to cut him.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. All right, so you show an optional start again.
This is like the what I remember right here in my mind.
So it's 8.
Boom! Come on. 8-6.
8-6. With short time in the third.
I think I get the takedown with like seconds left. He didn't. Now, would you hit him for stalling? Who was the more aggressor?
Yeah, well.
That's it.
2.
Now, would you have called that?
He still had a whizzer right there. I don't know about that one.
How much time's left? 3 seconds?
I can't see the camera's too far down. I can't see it can't be long. All right, so that's the end. We go to overtime. It's a 1 minute. The score is 8-8. The first point scored here. It could be a takedown, a penalty. You've been hit for stalling, so if you back up. There it is. Oh. You got to get your hips up. Nothing yet.
I throw in the boots.
There it is. Boom. That's it. You win by a final score of 10-8. You can tell that extra conditioning paid off.
Wow.
And then, of course, here's the ending, the medal ceremony. Got the backwards hat on.
There's CR.
Yep. That's where this one ends, man. So, aside from you winning, talk us through that, man. Does it play out the way you remember it?
That last part, yeah. Those I remembered getting that takedown, a little controversial because he still kind of had a whizzer, but yeah, and that was pretty much like in my mind, I had the last 30 minutes of that match. Like, and I remember like when he shot in, it was like send it. Don't hesitate, just go. And you know, there was no, that was it. You know, I remember. Yeah, that was a great feeling. It was a great feeling to actually, you know, set a goal, do all the things you need to, do all the right things, and see it fulfilled. You know, that was. I think it was like a catapult. You know, it really kind of set my mindset, made me feel more confident that, you know, I could actually, you know, maybe do this in college. You know,
and that's a perfect segue into what we were going to talk about next. You went from Simon Kenton coming out as a state champion, and you did go on to college. So tell us about your collegiate career.
So I was looking at going to a bunch of different places. I didn't feel that I was D1 caliber. I went to high school nationals. I didn't do too well. And then I had some D2 schools that were recruiting me. And my best friend at the time, he was offered a scholarship for track at Cumberland, and now it's University of Cumberland. Yep. And the wrestling coach said, "Hey, man, you look like a wrestler." And he wrestled with me in high school. Simon Kenton. His name was Andrew Crisp, and
Oh yeah, of course.
yeah, Andrew Crisp, and so the coach was like, "Hey, I'll give you a wrestling scholarship," and he goes, "No, but my best friend, he's still looking for a college," and so Jess Wilder called me, and I went down for a recruiting trip and wrestled and kind of hung, and I liked the environment. It was a Christian school, and it just it rang all the bells. It wasn't too far from home, but and it was good small environment, and I loved it, man. It wasn't. I got some friends that wrestled D1, and it was a job for them
Oh yeah.
for sure, right? And for us, I mean, we took it serious. But it was seasonal, and then we trained in the off season. But we had, I mean, these college guys now, they're maybe 20 matches ish. I had multiple years where I had over 60 matches in college.
Wow.
Yeah. We did. I never All American. It was one of my biggest. I was captain on the team. I still have a year of eligibility, believe it or not. Dean and I were one of our teammates from college. He's a head coach at an NAI school, and the way NAI works is there's no age restriction, and there's no your eligibility never ends. So
okay.
I had a medical red shirt. I had two red shirts. I don't know how it worked out, but so it left me with a year of eligibility. But so Dean and I were thinking hey, maybe we go back at 40 and wrestle on it. Our old teammate was like, "Yo, I'll give you a scholarship, come down, wrestle with us or something," But I just found out last week I got to get a spine fusion between C4 and C5. I got just from years of wrestling. So
I was going to say, after you get your spine fusion and Dean gets out of the Marines, you guys need to run it back a year. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Show these youngsters how you guys done it back in 1998. You know what I mean?
Well, it was like I said, the that state championship really kind of gave me a springboard, gave me some confidence. I went to college, and I was ranked third in the country 2 years in a row. And NAI is a pretty unique. I live up here in New Jersey now, and since 2003, I've pretty much been in New York City or New Jersey, and nobody really knows of NAI up here. They're like, "Oh, it's D1," or I mean, New Jersey's insane with wrestling, so my sophomore or my junior year, I basically had 6 reconstructive surgeries, 4 knee surgeries, and ankle surgery. My senior year, I blew out my shoulder. That year I was ranked third. Again, I mean, both years I should have been an All-American, hands down. Guys that I beat, they were All-Americans. My backup became an All-American. It just wasn't in the cards, man. I wanted it. I trained. I don't know what to say. My sophomore year, we had a guy, this guy, George Vigo. He was a multiple-time state champ from Florida. He came up. Him and I went 57-65. He left and he went to UTC when Brands went down there to coach. And so they came to our school for a home dual meet. And my coach goes, "I'm bumping you up. You're wrestling Vigo." And bumps me up. I beat him. Right. And in the match, second period, he was on bottom. He didn't do it on purpose, but he reached back and he grabbed my leg and he pulled it up and it snapped my ACL. And I finished the match. We helped put away the match, and that was it. The next morning, I was toast. But I tell you what, talk about an embarrassment, right? So you get a D1 school, comes to an NAI school. We beat them. He didn't even let them take their shoes off. He made them run straight to the bus, and they drove all the way down to UTC. Didn't even I ran into him one time and I said to him, I was like, hey, you remember that match against you, Cumberland that we beat you? And that was a sour moment for him, you know.
I guarantee it, man. I
And
guarantee
then
it.
you know, and then the same thing. Then the next year, I had another injury, put me out. And then my fifth year, I took an internship at the Olympic Training Center. I had applied for 3 years in a row, and I found out my best friend Drew and I were doing a roof, and I get the phone call, and I had to be in Colorado Springs in like 3 days. So I just packed up everything. I drove out there, and really my whole objective for that internship was so that I could train with the wrestling team. So Michael Irvin, he was a national champ for us. We knew some coaches up there, and I basically, that coach talked to Kevin Jackson. He let me come in to practice one day, and I hung with some of the guys, and so Kevin Jackson let me start training with the freestyle team after I got done with my internship, and so I would do all the freestyle practice, and then I would stay. And Momir was the U.S. Greco coach. I said, hey, could I try doing the Greco? And I wrestled this guy Farouk from Turkey. He came in through the WCAP program, and we wrestled. He put me in for a 1 hour grind match. We used to wrestle these matches, and I hung with him. And that's when I started to realize that Greco is really more of it just felt natural, like in like folk style wrestling and even freestyle. Like I felt like when I was wrestling, I was really had to think like, okay, what am I doing? Where am I going? When it came to Greco, I didn't even think. It was just I was flowing through the matches, and I fell in love with it. Unfortunately, I was at 23 years old, right? Where most of the guys were 16, 15, you know, doing Greco. And so that whole semester, I trained freestyle and Greco with the Olympic team. And I went out to the Sunkiss Open. I beat one of the best wrestlers from Colombia. He took third or fourth in the Olympics.
Wow.
And I didn't, you know, it's interesting as you mature through the sport or any sport, the mindset really becomes something that is at next level. Like physically, you get to a certain point where physically everybody's almost on a certain playing field, and then you got guys like Burroughs, right? That's hands above everybody. And so I remember Kevin Jackson and Brandon Slay were, and this is 2002. 2002. They're in my corner, and I didn't know who the guy I was going to wrestle. And Kevin Jackson looks at me and just I don't want to say he instilled this, but just the way he talked to me and he looked at me, and it was like, you got this match. I know you got it. And I go out there and I beat the guy. And like one of the best at that point in my career, that was like, I never beat an Olympic medalist, you know? And that's when it just clicked for me. And so I go back to college, and I was at a different level. You know,
I guarantee
being
it.
in that room, you know, I ended up getting a little surgery when I was out there. I was actually wrestling Brandon Slay, and I mean, he's a beast. And I tried to do an inside trip on him, and he just like, and it snapped. I had a bone spur on my ankle, and so they had to clean that out. I go back to college, and you know, I was cleaning house. I immediately jumped to, I think it was like number 3 or 2 or 3, and I go out to nationals, and I had an underhook on a guy, and I went for like a knee tap, and he jumped out, and I landed on the mat, and it was this shoulder. It dislocated, and my coach comes out, and he pops it back in, and I ride the guy, and I finish the match, right? And so now it's placing rounds. And so we had it was, you know, that morning session, and then you got the afternoon placing rounds. So all I had to do was win my next match, and I was guaranteed eighth. I could just, if I would have been able to wrestle right after that match, I would have been okay. But I had about a 3-hour break, and it just swelled, and I couldn't. I go out there in a match, and the guy kept yanking it, and it kept sublexing, and I mean the guy was I'd beaten the guy before. It was, and I was in tears the whole match, and that was it. That was my last college match, and it was really tough to watch. Like my backups, which was great. It was awesome to see them become All-Americans, but like to have that goal in my mind, that was it. So it was almost kind of like bittersweet. Like high school, I hit that final goal, and then college I never did, and I think that gave me the motivation. Because I got invited to move back out to the Olympic Training Center, but my shoulder was blown. And, when you get those kind of windows, it's slots open up and they close. And so that door closed. And so I moved up to New York City right after college. And I was working for my grandfather's construction company. And he was good friends with a guy named Cedric Argonian. Cedric he was part of the MWA, the Metropolitan Wrestling Association, who brought the World Championships to New York. And so Seth was he was a member at the New York Athletic Club. And when I was like a kid, I was like 13, I would go up to the New York Athletic Club in the summers, and my coach became a coach and like a really good friend of mine now, a guy named Sonny Greenhall. So Sonny, he was the chairman. He took over after Bill Farrell. And so Sonny was chairman at NYC for 40 years, I think. He's like 80. I was just with him in Florida. And I got to start training down in the wrestling room. And my training partner, he made the Olympic team for Peru. And he actually he didn't go to the Olympics. He just stayed in New York. And he was really poor in Peru, and he started the process to get his green card and stuff like that. And he started working for us, and him and I trained every day, Greco, and we were both 74 kilo guys. He was at the level of like Kevin Bracken, if you remember Kevin, right? And that was kind of how it was. And so from 2003 to 2008, I competed for the New York Athletic Club. Really, it was through 2007. I qualified for the World Team Trials in 2007. So typically, you either got a place at the nationals, or they had regional qualifiers. So I was the OW at the Eastern regions. Me and Dean were up there with the Marine Corps team, and so I won it 2 or 3 times, and not all the time it was a qualifier for the World Trials, but the year that I did in 2007, I won it. I was OW, and I was ranked on the Olympic ladder. I think I was like 8th at that point in time.
Wow!
And it was fun. I had some really high level coaches. Nick Katana. Just some awesome training partners. We had this guy, Kareem Gaybar, who was an Olympic champ from Egypt. He would come into the room. I mean, the NYC wrestling room was legendary in the early 2000s. You never knew who would be in there. And then I had this other Belarusian world champ, this guy, Andrei Baruk, who just took second at Veteran Worlds still at my age.
Wow.
And so we were just training, man. It was just, I worked. Get off of work, I would train in the morning, and so 2007 I got invited. USA, we took a team to Israel for this memorial competition for what happened in Munich. And so one of my coaches, his uncle was the one that held that door. If you watch that movie, he held the door to let the wrestlers jump out the window.
Oh, no kidding.
And his uncle got shot, the terrorist, and so they have this memorial tournament in Israel for that every year. And so we Avi Shmuley who was he just retired this year for the Olympics as a referee. So you would appreciate him and what he did. And so Avi assembled this team. We go there. There was one of my really good friends now, a guy named Jesse Jansen. You remember him? The Jansen ride. He was a national champ for Harvard.
Okay. Yeah. The name rings a bell.
Yeah. So me and Jesse, his brother Corey Jansen, Milko, and a few other guys, we went over. And so I made in the semis, I had a guy that was he was ranked in the world, definitely top 20, maybe top 10, it depended. And I beat him in the semis to go into the finals of this tournament. And in that match, I had a double overhooks on the guy, and I threw him, and he did a leg foul. And when he did, his head came straight down and landed on my chest. And I didn't really know like what happened. Like it knocked the wind out of me. I finished the match, and I go into the finals, and it's all like upper body gut wrenches, right? So, one thing I didn't realize is that your ribs get calloused. So we would train and just make the cartilage in our ribs like really strong. What I didn't know is I broke my sternum. So that bone that separate. So I'm in the finals, and this guy gets a gut wrench on me because the rules changed, and so as if there's a passivity or the ball flips and you go into this like basically after 1 minute, I think that's what it was. It was like 1 minute. If nobody scored, they flip a coin and somebody goes in parterre, top or bottom. So right. I happen to go on bottom. And as soon as he locked up the gut wrench and he went to turn and I tried to fight it, I felt my rib cage pop. And that was it. I like almost lost. Like I couldn't breathe. And I had to fly back. And the next week was the World Team Trials. I couldn't even run. I went to x-rays. They finally did like an MRI or something with contrast, and they were able to see that it split. And they're like, dude, don't go wrestle. Like you could puncture a lung. And I'm like, I made World Team Trials. I'm like, I'm a nobody from Kentucky, and I made it all the way up to here. I was never an All-American. I'm like, I shouldn't even be on this stage, but I made it. And I'm like, I'm going. So I flew out to Vegas. I couldn't even run. I put a bike in the sauna, and because what I realized, so I was 74 kilos, so it's like 163-ish, 163.5. That's what it was. I was too little. I was weighing 175. I was too little competing at that level. So I had to bulk. I was getting up to like 185, 188, and I was dropping to 20 pounds, and then we would take an IV. And now I'm hearing kids in middle school are doing this crap, right? But so I had to get that much weight to be able to compete with these guys that were, dropping 20, 30 pounds to make their weight class. So I made weight. I go out there, and it's in Vegas, right? And you're up on the podium, all the big lights. My coach was there, Sonny Greenhall, and another guy, Paul Kieblitz. He's a kind of like an ambassador for wrestling. And so they're right there. And my first match was Trent Paulson. He was a returning national champ. And I was doing okay. First period, I'm going, boom, boom, boom. He goes bottom. I lift him. I had a pretty good reverse lift. I lift him to throw him, right, to win that period. And he shifted, and my rib popped, and I drop him, and he gets me in a front headlock, one arm, front head, and I just feel it go like this. And I almost pass out, and that was it. And so I had about 9 months. The doctor said I couldn't even do a push-up for 9 months. And I went to the Olympic qualifiers in March. So that I think the World Team Trials was June. I didn't start training again until like maybe January, February. And I was like, it was the last ditch effort, and I went to the last qualifier in Iowa, and I beat a national, like a young kid. He was like 19, national champ that year from like high school national champs, or he just in college. I launched. Oh man, I wish I could find that tape, man. I jacked this kid up and I throw him for 5 to win a match, and he lands on the table.
Oh my goodness!
It was sick. But in that, when I did, because remember I was saying what we work out our rib cages, right? I wasn't able to do that. So when I threw him, I tore all the cartilage in the whole left side of my ribs.
Oh,
and I'm like I couldn't breathe. So my next match, it was like some other younger guy. I let him sweat it out. I just stood there, I was bouncing like I was warming up, right? And we're getting ready to go out there, and I set my shoes on the mat, and I shake his hand and I say, "Hey man, good luck, dude. Enjoy it and love this sport while you can." And that was it. And that was my journey, man. That was my journey. But it started in Kentucky, and my whole journey. Everybody, anybody I was associated with or coaches or whatever, I was like, yeah, man, I'm from Kentucky. I didn't really like tell them I was from Michigan or Detroit. It was just like I felt proud that I was able to continue in the sport and influence kids and be mentors to people and just say, hey, listen, man, I came from poor family from Kentucky and we just you can make your dreams happen, man. If you want, you just work as hard as you can and set that goal and just seek the right coaches, seek the right mindset, and you can make it. But it's your body, you're right. Like that. So I'm pretty beat up now, and
that's what I was going to say. It sounds like you need to go to Cyberdyne Systems and have them do like the Arnold Schwarzenegger endoskeleton on you. You beat yourself up pretty good. Now earlier in the video, we brought up Simon Kenton's, as of this filming, the only girl state champion they have, Gabriel Ocasio, and she got to go to Washington D.C. a couple years ago and be an ambassador for sanctioning girls wrestling apart from boys wrestling for I think it's called Wrestle Like a Girl. And you have a connection. So if you would kind of tell us that connection.
Yeah. So Sally Roberts, I became friends with her. She started Wrestle Like a Girl. I became friends with her when I was at the Olympic Training Center. She was out there training and competing. And, Cumberland in 90, so I went there 98 to 99 was my freshman year at Cumberland. They started a women's wrestling program. That was actually, some people say it was the first, and then there was Missouri Valley. So I don't really know, but thank God now it's in D1. But we had the first women's wrestling program, and so we had a girl named Takara Montgomery. She made the Olympics that year I think it was 2000 was the Olympics. So we kind of got to know the girls wrestling. There was a girl named Stephanie Murata. And so so when I went to the Olympic Training Center, I knew a bunch of these girls because they knew all our teammates. And so it just kind of like opened up the door. And then Sally and I just stayed friends through, the years, or just acquaintances. And I met her down in DC at one. And I started a nonprofit as well. And so I kind of picked her brain on certain aspects of it. And the first one I started was back in 2007. It was called Work to Train. And so we were providing housing, employment, and training opportunities to Olympic hopefuls. So what we were doing was basically what I experienced when I was wrestling. My grandfather let me. He knew I would work late or whatever I had to do, but I catered my work around my training. So I would train in the morning. I'd get done. I would go to practices. I would do training camps out in Colorado or tournaments or whatever it was. Right. And I says, well, I'm going to call it Work to Train. And I want other athletes, because as as you see it go through, and everybody's going for a cycle, right? Like 4 year, another 4 year, like where you're going. Most of them didn't really have jobs, and they were just training, and they had a college degree. But if they went 8 years, so they were 23, now they're 31. They had no working experience. And so now they're 31, maybe they're married or a kid or whatever. And now they're trying to get a job. And it was like entry level because you had no work experience. So now you're competing as a 31-year-old against a 23. And I just wanted to help bridge that gap for the athletes. I wanted to give them an opportunity to build their career, to have a lifeline at the end of that rainbow. Hey, you're going to fall back on work experience. And so that the economic collapse of 2008-9 hit right after I got my 501(c)(3). And then I sold a business. I had a manufacturing company I was partners in. And so we sold that maybe like 7 years ago. And right before COVID, I brought on a CEO to restart up Work to Train. And this time I didn't go down the staffing. I didn't go down the nonprofit route because it really took a while to get that 501(c)(3). And I set it up as a staffing company this time. And so basically right before COVID, I had about 90 jobs lined up. If you're, Beat the Streets, if you heard of Beat the Streets, it's like it's a nonprofit organization where they're in inner city, and they help fund wrestling programs in inner city, and they pay for the coaches and they pay for everything, and it gets kids off the streets. So New York City you always hear about that gala up in New York City. Do you ever hear of it?
Yep.
So that's Beat the Streets puts that on. And my buddy, Jesse, he was chairman of that, and a bunch of other people. So I went to Beat the Streets, and I said, hey, look, why don't I help some of these high school kids as they transition out? I'll get them summer jobs. Mm-hmm. So I had that, and I was working with the quite a few different agencies, and USA Wrestling was aware of what we were doing, and I helped. We had a couple guys that were getting ready to get started, plus about 90 other jobs we were trying to fill, and then COVID, and it really just it kind of tanked it because we were kind of working through the regional training centers, right? So where all the regional training centers were is we were focused on getting jobs where those were. And then COVID happened, and everybody kind of got displaced because they were at colleges or this and that, and it just so I tabled it, and now I still try to help wrestlers that reach out to me, try to help them get jobs and place them with other companies and stuff like that. But it's obviously my passion. So many years of my life was dedicated to the sport. And I just want to give back and help. And it was a great sport for me my whole life, and I want to see that it continues for the youth, for these kids, especially if, for me, we didn't have a lot of money. So all you needed was a pair of wrestling shoes and you're going, and I love that. And actually last year I donated. I'm hoping that maybe this year the schools will take advantage of this, and maybe this platform could help. A friend of mine, Nick Roy, he's partners with Jordan Burroughs, and there's a couple other investors in there. He has a software called Attack, and what it is it's a gaming platform that's really meant to kind of equalize the playing field. So you go in, you create a profile, and it helps gamify the training of wrestling. So like you get in there, and they got like videos from like Jordan Burroughs. He's showing technique on takedowns and leg attacks and front heads. But then it also has like nutritional programs, right? So you put in your program of like where you want to compete and win, and it helps build out your training program for like strength, conditioning, your nutrition. And so I contacted who did I go through? National Coaches Association, and I had them put me in touch with the head of Kentucky, and I made a donation to Attack, and I said, hey, listen, could you give this software to every school in the entire state of Kentucky? And that's what he basically did. So, Nick, I'm going to put him on the spot. I know it was last year, but I know nobody took advantage of it. And I think it's especially for kids that are like out in the country that maybe are not like Northern Kentucky or Lexington or Louisville that really have access to like really good training opportunities, or maybe like I'm sure certain areas in Kentucky they don't have coaches that really know all those aspects of the training that kids that have a lot of money that get privates and all this other stuff. This could help equalize and level that playing field. And so I'm calling Nick out and making sure that he offers that up to the whole state of Kentucky again.
Yeah, send me some information on that, and I'll be sure to link it in the description of the video, and we can get as much information out as we can on it, because that's a pretty cool story. And one little tidbit about Jordan Burroughs: there's actually a Kentucky wrestler that beat Jordan Burroughs at Beast of the East. Jacob Merton beat, and that video is on the channel. We actually have the match video.
Really?
Yep. Jacob's a 3-time state champion, and he's the assistant head coach at Campbellsville University. And yeah, he beat Jordan Burroughs in 2005 at Beast of the East.
Wow.
Yep, sure did. And Jordan Burroughs done a interview with Flo, or one of the track wrestling, one of them, talking about that match, of how he couldn't believe that a kid from Kentucky beat him. Yep, he sure did.
The next time I see him, I'll bring that up to him, because he'll come up. I'm still involved with the New York Athletic Club, so every year we have an international tournament, like in November, and Jordan comes up there. He's got 2 kids, and one of his is the same age as my daughter, and so like they were hanging out, and so when I see him next, I'm gonna bring that up.
Tell him Jacob Merton said hello. I'll text you the video link, that way you can have it. Say, hey, you remember, because Jacob Merton throws Burroughs.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
He sure does. He throws him. Dave, man, you have gave so much information. There's so many stories. The Olympic team trials, are going out there and going to Israel, and all your Greco. That's one thing I love about this series, is being able to bring stories like that out that people just wouldn't know otherwise. And now the entire world's going to have access to it, as long as time endures, if you will, because it's these are timeless, these are priceless, the stories, the information, and that's one of the reasons why I love getting to do it. So before we wrap this one up and put a bow on it, I like to give everybody the opportunity. Anything we didn't cover, any shout outs, any thank yous, anything like that you'd like to say before we wrap this one up?
Man, I really thank you for what you're doing for the state of Kentucky, and for us athletes, right? And even for the younger kids, right? Maybe my kids, or whatever, because actually a friend of mine sent me a video of Doug Blueball. Do you remember Coach Blueball? He was a 1960 Olympic gold medalist. He had a top of the world wrestling camp in Indiana, and he would tour down through Kentucky, and he'd show his front headlock, and I became real good friends with him. And there was some interviews of him up on Flow before he passed away. Probably about a decade ago, and right before all of this started really kind of catching on with Flow and everything. And so I watched that video today, and it was really sad that we don't have more of these videos of like these historic icons or wrestlers. And, maybe it's not at the Olympic level, but even here in Kentucky, and what you're doing in this database that you're collecting, I just think is awesome. And I wouldn't be surprised if other states start catching on to what you're doing there, Alex. So we're a little, as of this filming, we're a little bit more than 2 years in, because we started, the first video was Josh Muncie in January of 22. It's March of 24, and nobody's started yet. So I think that everybody is just around the country. I think they know that
they can't top us. They can't. They can only imitate us. They can't do any better than what we're doing because of having the match videos, getting the stories,
Yeah.
and just what is Kentucky's always had great wrestling. It's just been hid for so long. It just
Yeah,
has.
no.
I mean that's a fact. And now with this series, it's not Iowa, it's not Pennsylvania, it's not, no disrespect to New Jersey, it's not Michigan, it's not Minnesota, Wisconsin. It's Kentucky wrestling. Kentucky wrestling is the most accessible, the most watched, the most viewed for the state champions of any high school wrestling conference in the country is Kentucky. Who would have ever thought that, right?
No, it is. And I now I'm thankful to all my coaches that I had, Kaiser and Elkin and Dave Barnes. I mean, Dave was very he was helpful to me as well. And I got great memories and with those teammates that I had and the coaches. Funny story about Dave Barnes, right? The construction industry in New York City is like, it's a little tight knit, right? And so a buddy of mine, Joe Burke, he runs a garbage company. So Joe Burke wrestled at Seton Hall at the same time that Dave Barnes did. So I'm down at Nationals when they had the NCAAs in Philly, and me and Joe were hanging out, and he was telling me about the year that he became an All-American, and I'm like, oh yeah. So he's like, yeah, I was wrestling. I beat this senior to become an All-American from Miami of Ohio. And I was like, who'd you wrestle? And he goes, Dave Barnes. I'm like, shut up. I'm like, that's my coach. So I called up Barnes and I'm like, hey, you would never guess who I'm here with. And he's like, who? And I go, Joe Burke. And it just goes silent. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, he's one of my boys up here. And I didn't know you guys wrestled. And it was like, he'd never talked to him, right? I put him on speaker and like, that's a sour match, right? Like you lose out to be he should have been a 2-time All-American. I wish it wasn't 2 people that I knew, but it's just funny how that relationship of and I told Joe, I was like, yo, he was a Kentucky boy, So it's good to see Kentucky wrestling. I'm glad that you guys are, it's just advancing. I heard about the Rainey kids and
they're tough.
County and what they're doing, and I think that the part of the advancement of higher level wrestling in Kentucky, it seems like it stemmed from the colleges, by us having colleges in the state put out better wrestlers to go back home and coach. And so, I think there's from what I've heard, there's a lot of coaches in the state at a high school level that all wrestled in college. And that just elevates the level. And I love it. Love it.
Dave Barnes's review videos on the channel, his 1988 videos on, also his, the match when he, wins his blood round match going to his placement from 92 in the NCAAs is on his video as well. So we have a lot of good Dave Barnes videos on his review video. So Dave, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this. So much information that I know everybody's going to enjoy watching. And I'm glad we were able to give you your match video. Your kids can watch it. All the people that man. You talked earlier. I'll say this and we'll wrap it up. Earlier, you talked about George King, and George King has one of my favorite lines because once we leave high school, once we leave the sport, we go on, we create lives, whether it's work and family, whatever it is. And you kind of, kids always come first. We know that whenever you have kids, they're number one in whenever what they want to do. And George, he has a son. I think as of this filming, I think he's a sophomore, and he's got a couple Division I football offers to play linebacker, tight end, different places like that. Name's Deacon King. But in George's video for 2000, of course, George, most outstanding wrestler, quickest pin, most pins in the least amount of time, just an absolute animal. And I was asking him about it, and he's like, maybe not now, but at one time, Dad could do it. And I think that's such a great line for guys that have come on to be dads or grandpas or whatever. Hey, maybe not now, but I've got the proof. At one time, Dad could do it. So, man, again, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you all for watching. Simon Kenton crowd, I know you're going to enjoy all this information, and you can say that one of a pioneer made it all the way to Israel and competed for the United States, man. Not too many people can say that, but that's where we're going to end this one. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys and girls on the mats.